Greetings, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Narrative Breakdown. Uh, I usually try to do these episodes when Carrie and I are on a break from our podcast episodes. These are really fun for me to do, and I look forward to getting into this episode with you guys today. We're going to talk about 5 non self help books that actually might be helpful to self. That's what we're going to get into today. Before we begin, let me just remind everybody to please subscribe to our channel. So if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed yet, hit the wrong button there. Let's see. And you haven't subscribed yet, there we go. Please subscribe to our channel. And if you're watching this on Facebook or you head on over to YouTube, subscribe, like the videos. Ring the bell, do all the things that you're supposed to be doing to please the algorithm so that more of our content can get out to more people. So I really appreciate that. And then, of course, if you haven't listened to Carrie and our podcast called Therapist Take, check that out too. We have that on YouTube as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other podcast platforms. And so this broadcast, the breakdown, this does not go on a podcast platform. So right here on YouTube is the only place to see that. So anyways, all right. So the narrative breakdown. This is a live show that I try to do sometimes. I've only done a few episodes. But we break down scenes from movies or television shows. But today we're going to actually focus on some books, and not necessarily we're going to focus on the entire book itself, and not just certain scenes in the book. And so this is how it's going to go. Just to kind of to clue you into how we're going to structure it here. So basically, I'm going to cover 5 different books. Now, stay tuned to the very end because I'm going to do these in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 order. But there's also an honorable mention that I'm going to do in between 2 and 1 to talk about. I'll give you a brief synopsis of the book, or at least from what I remember of the book, and then I'll talk about the self-help component. And when I say the self-help component, I'm just talking about specific to me. I'm not saying these are the best books to ever be written, or the non-self-help books that have a self-help component. These are the best ones. These are just the ones that I've read and I thought were very helpful and kind of somewhat surprising, some of them, that they had such a strong mental health component to them. And then the last thing I'll do is share a quote from each book, so just to kind of tie you into it. That was actually kind of hard. I was going to do my favorite quote, but that was really hard to do. There's so many great ones in each one. And some of these books, some of them I hadn't read in a little bit, and some of them, as I have one back here behind me that you can't see, that I keep on my shelf at all times. And that's my number 1 book, which I'll tell you about here in just a minute. And if you know me, you already know what I'm going to talk about. So anyways, so that's what we're going to do. The 5 non-self-help books that might be helpful. And just so you guys know, like I said, these are specific to me. So if there are some non-self-help books that are helpful to you, please post those into the comments. I'd really appreciate it. I'm working the switcher, so all the things are flashing up on the screen right now. I'm working that instead of having Hannah or Rebecca do that. So that also means I'm watching the comments and stuff come through the Facebook feed or the YouTube feed, so I can see those right here. So feel free to do that. Also, as always, check out the video description for links and resources. I've linked all these books already, so if you want to cheat, you can go see what books I'm going to talk about. But you don't necessarily know what order I'm going to talk about them in. But after this video airs on the YouTube channel, I'll put in a lot of other just resources that I like to put in, so to try to be as helpful as I possibly can, because this is a mental health channel. So check that out. Okay, so let me cue up the first one here, and so the first book. So like I said, we're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, honorable mention, and then 1. And let's see, I gotta get it. All right. So the first one is Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. So for those of you that know me well, you might be surprised that this is the fifth of them, because I love Malcolm Gladwell. I like, you know, almost every book that he's written. In fact, I kind of have this rule. I kind of broke it with his last book a little bit, but that I won't listen to them on Audible. I actually have to physically read them with him. There's only one other author that I do that with, and that's John Grisham. And so, but I did break that rule with him on the last one because he started recording his books like podcasts. So I think that one's called Talking to Strangers, I think. But Outliers, yeah. So this book, a lot of people know this book. And I think most people recognize this book if you've heard anybody talk about the 10,000 hour rule, like that it takes, to become an expert at anything, you have to spend 10,000 hours on it. Well, it's Malcolm Gladwell that really kind of popularized that notion in this book called Outliers that, I can't remember the date he wrote this. It had to have been probably 20 years ago. And he wrote like a trilogy back then. He wrote The Tipping Point, and then he wrote Blink, which was super popular too. All these are great books, by the way. In fact, his next book coming out is another tipping point type of book. And then he wrote Outliers, and I think just a lot of people really like this because this book is focused on the outliers of our society, the outliers of our culture. So we're talking about your professional athletes, your celebrities, movie stars, millionaires, billionaires, CEO types, people that were able to figure out how to accomplish amazing things. And probably if I were to say what I to kind of give more to what this book is about, it's really, to me, because this is what I took away from it. So you might take away something completely different. To me, it was debunking the notion that if you had enough drive and ambition, and if you really wanted something, and you had the proper education and maybe a little bit of money attached to it, that you can accomplish almost anything. And he's really kind of debunking that notion, saying that there is also a major luck factor involved in this. And so when we get to the mental health piece of this, or the self-help piece of this, for me personally, it helped me be kinder to myself. It helped me show more grace to myself that, there are certain, there's a component of being in the right place at the right time is also part of the formula on how these outliers of our culture are able to do the things that they did. It wasn't that they were better than me or more special than me or smarter than me, and I'm sure some of them are smarter than me, but it really reflects that some of them were just the right place at the right time, and he goes over several different ways and how that looks, and he covers different kind of biographical stories of people, specifically like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, for example. But he also will talk about people in general, like general outliers, like professional athletes and professional baseball players, professional hockey players, and there's something unique and specific about these players and how they end up going pro and becoming superstars. So really great book. The other piece that I think the mental health piece to it is something I took away. I say mental health, more like a self-help, is that is to keep my eyes open for those opportunities. He kind of talks about the right place at the right time. It's not really forced, it's more of like just being there, and whether they took advantage of it and didn't know it, or took advantage of it because they caught it, is to be determined. But I started to show myself grace about that just because I'm not achieving to the degree that other people are doesn't mean that something's inherently wrong with me, or I'm not doing enough, or I'm not driven enough, or I don't want it enough. It could just part of it is that you got to be in the right place at the right time. But I do want to keep my eyes open for those opportunities, and so I really like that. All right, so that's the book. Let me give you the quote, a really good quote from the book here. There you go. So these three, or those, okay, so again from the book here, those three things, so he just got done talking about these three things. Autonomy, complexity, and connection between effort and reward are, most people will agree, the three qualities that work has to have if it is to be satisfying. So he's talking specifically about jobs and work, you know. And so again, those three things, autonomy, complexity, and a connection between effort and reward are, most people will agree, the three qualities that work has to have if it is to be satisfying. Now, one thing that, as I just mentioned earlier, that I had a hard time with on this is picking the right quote. I mean, there's so many good ones, especially books like this. Malcolm Gladwell is such a brilliant mind, has such a gift with putting words together in such a way that just, you know, makes you go, wow, you know, or that was powerful, that was good, you know. And so that's the fifth one. So number 5 was outliers. All right, let's get into the next one here. Cue it up real quickly. All right, this is number 4. Think Again by Adam Grant. The power of knowing what you don't know. You know, so again, people that know me well might be surprised that this one's number 4, because I also love Adam Grant. I love a lot of the work that he's doing in his podcast. He does one. I think he's got a couple podcasts, but my favorite is Work Life with Adam Grant. He's a organizational psychologist at Wharton in Pennsylvania, I believe. And again, just a brilliant mind. In fact, if you spend some time learning a little bit about Adam Grant, I believe he's a Harvard graduate that was heavily influenced by the work of Malcolm Gladwell. So he kind of, you know, his books kind of have that Malcolm Gladwell feel. But Malcolm Gladwell is a journalist by trade, and Adam Grant is a researcher. And so you will see that show up in their work. So Think Again came out, I would guess 2 or 3 years ago. I should have looked up the dates of these books before I put them on here. And I remember I read it because it's Adam Grant, and I love Adam Grant. And so but as I was reading, I was like, man, everybody should read this book. Everybody needs to read this book. It was one thing that I really value is critical thinking. I've said for a long time that therapists are a lot of different things. We're trained in different things, not just one thing. But one of those things, I believe, is critical thinking. Like we are trained critical thinkers, and this book is kind of a critical thinking type book. It just, you know, it's basically, you know, encouraging us to get interested in the mysteries of life, recognize that there is more we don't know than what we do know, you know, and kind of so taking that humble position, but taking like a researcher stance, you know, a position of curiosity to explore the things that you don't know. But in order to do that, you have to be able to let your thoughts and your views and your perspectives change and evolve, you know, because if you learn something, if you're looking for what you don't know, and you discover something new about what you don't know, so now you know it, sometimes it's going to be the information you get is going to be such a big piece of information that's going to change how you see things and how you understand the world and how it operates. And if you're not willing to let yourself do that, you're going to find yourself being stuck in a status quo. And because there is, you know, the fear is real. I mean, there's a lot of implications with changing how you view the world, because there are a lot of potential losses that can come with that. Losing family. I mean, look at the political stance, right? Look at the divide, you know, like if you, with whatever political perspective that you have, you know, how many people, how many friends, how many relationships might you be concerned about losing if you changed your political stance? So there's a lot of reason, there's a lot of good reason for us not to change, but I don't know if they're good enough reasons, but, it's not like, it's not nothing. I think to say that we should just suck it up buttercup is kind of ridiculous. And it's the same with like religion too, which tend to be kind of the two, don't talk at the dinner table topics. So, that, I kind of gave the synopsis, but it also kind of hits on kind of the self-help piece of it, the critical thinking piece, the importance of critical thinking, opening your mind up to new ideas, new perspectives, new ways, and realizing, and really looking for where you might be wrong. And so again, a great book. That makes number 4 on my list here. I'm having to look over my mic to see my other screen, see if I can move this over just a little there, so I have to do that. Okay, so let's look at the quote from the book Think Again by Adam Grant. So this is the one I picked. Again, you're going to find a lot of amazing quotes in this book. Here it goes. So, thinking like a scientist involves more than just reacting with an open mind. It means being actively open-minded. It requires searching for reasons why we might be wrong, not for reasons we must be right, and then revising our views based on what we learn. That's powerful to me. I love stuff like that. So it's a really good quote. That gives you a little bit of a taste of what you're going to get into if you read the book Think Again. It's a really great non-self-help helpful book. So number 5 we said was Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. Number 4 was Adam Grant's Think Again. And now we get to number 3. Don't know why my screen does this. Number 3 is, there we go, Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. All right, guys, this is, let you in on a little secret here about this book. This book is probably one of the top books that really rocked my world. I had to really take this in stride. I didn't know what I was getting into when I started to read it. I actually heard Yuval Harari being interviewed by Dax Shepard on the Armchair Experts podcast, and I just really liked how they talked and what they were talking about. And then he mentioned this book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, which sounds kind of boring to me, to be honest with you. But the interview was so interesting that I'm like, I'm going to read this. And man, dude, it rocked my world. Like, and if you ask Carrie about it too, Carrie's my business partner and co-host on the Therapist Take podcast, she'll tell you, it just kind of blows your mind, But it's kind of like, for me, like it was really rocking my perspective a little bit. I had to really take it in doses because it would stir me up too much, But truly an amazing book. I really like this book. Really, again, like a perspective, a challenge to perspective. And the other thing too is like, it may not do this for you. None of these might. This might be specific to where I was at a time in my life. I don't know, but it's a great book. And he basically, the synopsis of it here is it's pretty much in the title, A Brief History of Humankind. He basically takes you back all the way and kind of gives you, a brief history of human beings, and, a book, the book might be a little thick, but given the grand scheme of human existence, it is quite brief. But there's just some really cool things in there, things, again, he has a way of presenting things that you don't really think about, like this idea that we often think that we domesticated wheat, but wheat really domesticated us, and it's a really fascinating idea on why that is, and he dives into that. the self-help piece of it was just really, it really helped me think about my position on a lot of things, especially my faith. And by the way, I think Yuval Harari, I don't think he comes out and just says he's an atheist, but I think it's pretty much implied in that. Um, and that was where some of the challenging pieces were coming for me. But it really helped me rethink my position on faith, amongst a lot of other things, government, civil rights. There were so many different things that he just kind of dives into. I'm like, I just never thought about that. And so at the end of it, I still have a faith. I'm not an atheist, but it's different. I will say that, but I feel like it's mine. Like I really felt like I have rethought it, and not like I've landed on something that's super rigid. I kind of going back to the Adam Grant thing. I want to continue to grow it, develop it, and rethink it, and things like that. And so that's how the book landed with me. All right, so let me show you a quote here from that book. Just kind of give you a little taste of what I'm talking about here. One of history's few iron laws is that luxuries tend to become necessities and to spawn new obligations. Again, amongst a lot of other great quotes. So, yeah, um, I think we can all relate to that. That, what once was a luxury, we now is something we can't live without, and there are a lot of obligations and to that, and maybe even sometimes we get imprisoned to that. So like, there's also a really cool book. It's not one I was planning on mentioning, but it was one that impacted me many years ago, called The Same Kind of Different as Me, which involves about a rich art dealer who crosses paths with a modern day slave. So I didn't know this, but it makes sense that there's a lot of people that can continue to be slaves or slave-like well after the Emancipation Proclamation, well after the Civil War, and into a modern era because they just didn't know, and so at the time that he runs into this guy, he is homeless, and it's kind of interesting because the guy that's homeless actually prefers to be homeless because he sees people with money as being imprisoned by it, and so they're the slaves, in that sense. It's just pretty interesting book, so that can be also an honorable mention, is The Same Kind of Different as Me. Okay, so our number 5 was Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Number 4 was Think Again by Adam Grant, and number 3 was Sapiens by Yuval Harari. All right, it's getting better and better. This number 2 is a doozy, one of my favorites, and it is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. Okay, so this book is absolutely one of my favorites. I did not, it came recommended by a client, and sometimes, a client recommends something, I'll read it if I have time, and this would happen to be one of them, and I am so grateful I did. Never in my life that I think this book, if you were to tell me about this book, that I think, one, that I'd ever read it, and number 2, though, that it would have the impact that it had. Truly a great book. It's a story. It's not, so it's kind of deviates from the other 3 that we just mentioned. And this is actually a fictional tale. And to kind of just brief rundown here, and I'm not giving anything away. I'm not going to give you any spoilers here, but just kind of a general thing. It's not going to give anything away. Is that this is a book about a 16-year-old boy whose mother is dying of cancer. So it's it's a tough setup already, right? Like, it's pretty raw just thinking about that. And but while he is home one day, a monster comes to his window in the form of a tree, and tells him that he's going to come back and tell him 3 tales. And at the end of the 3rd tale, the boy is going to tell him a tale, and it's a really interesting setup. And the tales that the monster tells are, on the surface, it look pretty like black and white, but as you dive into them, it's a lot much more complicated. And that's really what the book is really getting at, is the complexities of life, the complexities of loss, the complexity of human beings and feelings, and so many complexities that on the surface it might look quite simple, but it's not. And then of course there's the final tale that the boy tells the monster, and it's, whew. This is the one, by the way, like if you saw the show, the notes in the description or on Facebook, what I put on there is like one of the questions is learn about, one that Josh read that made Josh cry. I can't remember exactly how I wrote it, while running. This is it. This is the one. I was out for a jog. This one I was listening to on Audible. And I'm like, man, people driving by probably might have thought I was out of my mind or something, because it just pulled at my heartstrings, and I was like, I wasn't like bawling or anything, but it was probably evident that I might have been having a hard time that one. So that really shocked me and surprised me that it did that to me. But I think, you don't have to have experienced somebody dying of cancer that's close to you to relate to this book. Both my parents are still alive. Thankfully, cancer is not a major concern in my family, but we've all experienced loss. Most of us, if you've lived more than 2 decades, you've probably experienced loss to some degree. And I think most people can find themselves in this, and so a great book. So I will put the quote up now for you. Your mind will believe, I love this quote, by the way. Your mind will believe comforting lies while also knowing the painful truths that make those lies necessary. And your mind will punish you for believing both. Guys, that is an amazing quote. It's so good. I want to talk about it in a second, so I'm going to put it up, leave this up on screen while I talk about it here, but I need to take me off. There we go. Sorry, there's a certain way I have to punch this in to get it to format correctly, but I really want to talk about this. There we go. All right, so move this over. Here we go. All right, so yeah, there's a certain order that I have to punch all these buttons to make it do that. So that's why it's nice having somebody do that for me. So just to repeat that quote a little bit, your mind will believe comforting lies while also knowing the painful truths that make those lies necessary, and your mind will punish you for believing both. And if you are an addict, primarily what I'm familiar with and the work that I do as a therapist is with sex addiction or sexually compulsive people, this probably, I would guess this would resonate with you, because this idea of believing these comforting lies, because as opposed to painful truths, but I love the part where he says that, so your mind will believe these comforting lies while also knowing the painful truths, but these painful truths that make the lies necessary. So now it doesn't mean they're necessary just in the story of your mind. It feels like they're necessary, but it's really not necessary. It just feels that way. But then your mind will punish you for believing both. I mean, yeah, that's kind of what happens, that, you're believing a lie, and you're going to feel shame because it's a lie, but then the alternative is feel the grief for knowing the truth, and so it's just such a great quote. Great job, Patrick Ness, in putting that together. Such a brilliant mind, some of these people, these authors, and how they think, and it's just, I don't know, some people are just wired that way. I don't know how they are able to do that and to string the words together like that for people like you and me to benefit from and to grow from. And so Fantastic book, guys. All right, so we're down to our honorable mentions. So just a recap of the 5 books. And by the way, let me just remind you guys, if these are the books that are helpful to me, right? Like these, or these. So it's not. I'm not saying these are the top 5 for everybody. It's just the ones for me. So, but if there are some non-self-help books that have been helpful for you, then please write those in there, and might be some good ones for us to check out, and maybe I'll read one of them if it strikes my interest. So yeah. Okay, so the 4 that we have mentioned, we did Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, Think Again by Adam Grant, Sapiens by Yuval Harari. Number 2 was Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. So now we get to our honorable mention. You guys are going to love this. Our honorable mention is, put me back up there on the right screen here. All right, honorable mention is Trejo by Danny Trejo. Don't you guys love this? Oh man, I'm going to get my colleagues going to tease me relentlessly for this. But guys, I love this book. And if you do it on Audible, it is read by Danny Trejo himself. It really is, to me, I'll speak for myself, it really is such a fascinating book. His story is amazing. This guy that goes, he's basically, he's not just, a guy in prison. Like, he's like the guy you don't want to mess with in prison. I mean, and then for him to get out, clean his life up, get sober, find value in his sobriety. Of course, he's working in Hollywood, in the Los Angeles area. He finds himself stumbling onto a movie set where they need someone like him to play a certain role, and then next thing you know, he is living the Hollywood life, and I think he is the most killed man on screen. Like his character, his whatever characters he plays, they often get killed, and so it's just really interesting story, something that I think just is encouraging, inspiring, but just a lot of good messages in there, from like a mental health or just a self-help type of perspective. And so that's the honorable mentions. Danny Trejo. I do have a great quote. This one is actually my favorite quote from the book. And he says, the way I see it, if he ain't worth killing, he ain't worth fighting. And if he ain't worth fighting, he ain't worth getting upset about. And since you're not upset, grab me a Dr. Pepper from the icebox. So just kind of some context there in that is that Danny Trejo had gotten out of prison, and he was, really, straightening his life up and everything. And apparently, I didn't know this, but there are actually people on the outside that have been to prison and successfully, or was living their life successfully on the outside, and that they will kind of serve as kind of mentors, kind of like you might think of like a sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous or something, as these mentors to help other people who are doing that. And so I believe it was his mentor, if I'm remembering this correctly, it's his mentor that was saying this. So basically, Danny Trejo was upset with somebody. Somebody really ticked him off, and he was really wanting to go beat the tar, as my mom would say, out of this person, and instead of doing that, he did the right thing, and he drove to his sponsor's or his mentor's house, and he was just telling this guy how much he wanted to, go lay into this guy, and this guy was like, hey, hold on a second, and that's when he said, if he's not worth killing, he's not worth fighting. If he ain't worth killing, he ain't worth fighting. If he ain't worth fighting, he ain't worth getting upset about. And then he's like, since you're not upset, which I think is great way to say that. But grab me a Dr. Pepper from the icebox, which also, great choice of drink, by the way. So that is the honorable mention, Trejo book. Check that out. The last book I have, the number 1 book on my list, is also an autobiography. And It is also a book that I get teased relentlessly about by some of my colleagues, which I'm okay with because I always joke around, they haven't read it, read it and then come back to me because it is a really good book. It was tainted a little bit, I think, maybe in the eyes of some people based upon some recent events, so I'm going to try to reignite maybe your interest in it. So the Josh's number one pick for best non-self-help, helpful to self book is, get it on the side by side here, Will by Will Smith. So, I know that with recent events, with the slap heard from around the world, it might have really turned a lot of people off from Will Smith. And I was mostly upset about it because I've been recommending this book to people. I'm like, it's making it hard to recommend, But I really do think, like, if you read the book, you probably might even understand more about what happened that night. I actually wrote a blog about that event and what I think may have happened based upon reading this book. And so, guys, this book is truly full of great mental health ideals, concepts, stories. His story itself is just a page turner. It truly was hard to just put this book down, but he really gives you a deep look, or a look deep inside of his mind and inside of his life. You can tell he's done a lot of therapy, just by some of the language he uses. And I kind of even wonder if he may have worked with some person with a mental health background when writing this book, because it almost appears to me like he wanted that to be, there's so much mental health stuff in it that I'd have a hard time thinking that wasn't intentional. And so a lot to learn, a lot of things from this book. This is actually a book that I keep. It's actually back here underneath my coffee table behind me. This is my therapy office back here. I keep this book handy because there's certain quotes and stuff have underlined I like to read from. Sometimes I'll even play certain Audible clips for clients. The Audible version is also fantastic. I've been a Will Smith fan my whole life, so listening to him read his story is perfect for me. I could listen to him talk all day. So, fantastic, but I don't want to oversell it, but it really is probably, at this point in my life, my favorite book. Definitely my favorite autobiography that's been written. All right, so just kind of give you guys a brief glimpse here inside the book. This is by far not my favorite. It was just too hard to really put my favorite one in there. I should go pull the book up and read to you. You know what? I might just do that. I'll put this up real quickly. And then let me grab that book. Hold on. Okay, so it's respectable to lose to the universe. It's a tragedy to lose to yourself. And again, and that's a pretty good quote. That's, the book is full of stuff like that. And so, but I do have my copy right here. Like I said, I keep this handy. Have certain things underlined, certain pages marked. But I'll go ahead and read to you guys one that I often read, and you can see on the way I have it too. I'm actually going to read the highlighted text as if it's one paragraph, so I'm skipping over a lot of great stuff, which is hard for me to do, but I'm going to for the sake of this. But this is what he's talking about fantasy, and so you can imagine as a person, a mental health professional that works with people that are battling sexually compulsive behavior or they're sex addicts. I'm dealing with a lot of people that live in a fantasy world a lot of times. And so he says, as a child, I would disappear into my imagination. I could daydream endlessly. There was nothing more entertaining to me than my fantasy worlds. This constant stream of images and colors and ideas and silliness became my safe haven. For me, the border between fantasy and reality has always been thin and transparent, and I've been able to step in and out of it effortlessly. I've been able to step in and out of each effortlessly. The problem is one man's fantasy is another man's lie. So that's one of many great quotes from the Will Smith book, from Will. So anyways, so there you have it, guys. That's basically the narrative breakdown for this time around. Again, remembering the shows, if we go down the order, Josh's top 5 basically started with number 5 was Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Number 4, Think Again by Adam Grant. Number 3, Sapiens by Yuval Harari. Number 2 was A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. Then we had our honorable mention, Trejo by Danny Trejo. And then finally, the number 1 pick for me was Will by Will Smith. And so, great non-self-help books that might be helpful to self. So, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Again, my name is Josh Nichols at Family Solutions Counseling, FamilySolutionsOK.com. But, if you like the content that's being shown here, please subscribe to our channel on YouTube, ring the bell so you can be notified when more helpful videos are posted. But you can also head on over and like some of our other social media pages where I feel like we put some pretty good content out there, So we got our podcasts, we do YouTube shorts or certain reels and things like that. But you can see the different media outlets we have there. And then, of course, tune in for Therapist Take, which is our podcast that Carrie and I do. We try to do that weekly. But Josie and Mary also have their podcast called Are You in Session with Josie and Mary. Really good podcast. It's also they broadcast it live on YouTube, and it's on the audio platforms just like the Therapist Take one. And then coming soon, I cannot wait for this one, is Carl Patterson's. We're working on this one right now. I don't know why it's not showing up. There we go. Carl Patterson's podcast called Poetry and Layers, where he presents kind of a mental health stance through poetry, or mental health content through poetry. So really good stuff, guys. Thank you for being here again. Keep following us. I started a little bit late today. I was about 30 minutes late, but usually we try to go live on Fridays at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time.